Hi, this is Keith Crane. I want to thank Keith Andrews for inviting me on his show. We had an amazing time.
Name's Keith Andrew, and you're watching the Keith Andrew Network. That's right, the Keith Andrew Network that is available on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. So make sure to like, share, subscribe. Our goal is to reach 500 and more views. If you're watching, you are obligated to leave a comment for me and our guests, and you're supporting a talk show host with a disability. That being said, today it's Friday, and you know what that means? Available on Peacock, and for the time being on Fox 5, it's WWE SmackDown. Tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Western. If you like WWE, make sure to check out Friday Night SmackDown. Also, if you're a fan of Bill Maher, it's being filmed today, but it will be aired tomorrow on HBO. If you're a fan of Bill Maher, definitely check out HBO on Apple TV and all social media. So that being said, we have a great guest. He already introduced himself. So with that being said, the first subject I want to talk to you about is the coronavirus. Starting off big, but might as well change it up a little bit. Usually we do the icebreakers, but why not try something a little different? So the first subject we're going to talk about is the coronavirus. How has it impacted your life, and has it impacted your career?
Well, it certainly did. When it hit in, I guess it was March of 2020, it shut down the whole entertainment industry, music, film, everything was, as I like to say, flatlined. And however, I try to look at the positive, even though it was a horrible time for everybody. I found it a very creative and freeing time because since I wasn't working, basically we were shut down for well over a year. I didn't work for a year. But it gave me an opportunity in the studio, since she couldn't be around people, to, instead of working as a work for hire musician, composer, producer, etc., I just landed up going back to my roots of just writing for myself. So I landed up writing over an album's worth of material in that period of time when it was really bad, when nobody was doing anything. So in essence, it was a horrible time. I was lucky I didn't get it. As far as I know, at least I could have had it asymptomatically. But I did manage to go back to my roots of loving music for the sake of loving music, instead of being only a gun for hire, as they say, and which I love. And I'm very blessed to be, fairly successful at it. But it was really nice time to go back and just write and create just for myself, right? Nobody had to say anything. I didn't have anybody around me. So that was a really, it was kind of an interesting dichotomy. It was a horrible time we were going through, but, I was able to channel some wonderful creativity in that time, all alone, as we couldn't work with other musicians. I did work with some people remotely though, which was kind of cool. So that's what the coronavirus did for me. I unfortunately, it seems to be ramping up again. So we all have to be very careful. But when it really hit hard and everything stopped, that's what I was able to do, and it it was a really interesting time, because I was very secluded, but very creative.
Now, the next question I want to ask you is you were born and raised in Monroe, New York, were you not?
No, actually not. I was born in Yonkers and for the most part raised in Rockland County, which is our county south of us. Um, and I moved up here about 16 years ago, and I love it. I love it up here.
What made you make the transition?
Well, at the time I was married, and my wife has family up here who live in Monroe, who I adore, and they're musicians also. And she wanted to be closer, so we had a young child. My daughter, she was very young at the time, and I think she was 4 when we moved up. And so it was kind of her. She was the catalyst. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it, but at the end of the day, I'm happy to be up here. I really like it.
No, I was born and raised up here.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's eventually going to be taken over by the Hasidics, but you can't really do stop that. But I mean, you can stop them to a point, but if you have money, it's a losing battle. We don't have to talk about politics if you don't want to.
I can talk about anything you want. I mean, I agree. Being Jewish doesn't even matter because, as far as they're concerned, I'm not. I'm not them. It, you know, I have my feelings about them and what they have done in what we've allowed them, I guess,
Yeah.
to do. And I grew up in Muncie. Muncie was like that when I was a kid. And one thing I know about the Hasidic community is they're very patient and they have long-term goals. They knew 30 years ago what they were planning on doing now. And they're doing it. And unfortunately, we've let them take a lot of land. And the good thing is at least they're not part of our politics anymore in the town of Monroe, because they have their own town now. However, I'm finding them, coming closer and closer to me. Now I'm on more the Tuxedo side of Monroe, by Walton Lake. And, they're starting to come and look, they're free to do whatever they want.
Right.
But sadly, they're breaking away from like KJ, for example. I guess time will tell what happens at the end of the day.
I agree with you too. When I was younger, I looked forward to the Jewish holidays. And after seeing what they're doing, it's like, you know what, they're enough to make me anti-Semitic. And gets when you get older, you see life in a different point of view. I mean, yes, I am Jewish, but I really don't care anymore. It's kind of, this is how I see it. I celebrate the important holidays. I celebrate Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's, July 4th, because I am a full-blooded American. I celebrate the holidays I enjoy. Now, when my grandparents were alive, God rest their souls, I looked forward to it because you bring the family together. Unfortunately, my grandparents are no longer here. I don't really see, or the enjoyment that you look forward to when the holidays came around. Yes, I have my parents, knock on wood, but it's getting older sucks, number one. And you just have people ruin things for you. And it's like, you know what? I used to like this. Now I can just give a shit about it. I know that sounds horrible, but that's how I feel.
No, I now let me ask you, do you still, and I very, very much like you, I joke about it, it's, just make light of the situation. I say, well, you have Bud Light, you have Coors Light, and then you have Jew Light. But, I never, and my daughter was bat mitzvahed, really for for just the tradition of it. And I wanted, because she's half Jewish and her mom's Italian, so she's half Christian. I just wanted her to have a little bit of our heritage.
Right.
And I never deny my faith. I'm not a practicing quote unquote Jew, but I'll go head to head with anybody if they start getting in my face about what I am. I'm proud of it. I'm sad to see what's going on in the Middle East, but that's been going on for thousands of years, sadly. But I'm proud of my faith and my heritage, but I don't. Too many people make judgments. I don't judge. I'm not a person that's going to judge what they do, what you do. I know what I feel in my heart, and I just kind of I believe in. You can call it God. You can call it whatever you want. I believe in the universe carrying us and guiding us. I use that term, the universe, and it's true. And it does suck getting old, by the way, because I'm 66, and but life gets interesting and better you'll find that as you get older. It sucks in a certain way. Physically, your body breaks down a little bit. But there's an expression that it's been around forever. What is I'm trying to remember. The youth is wasted on the young, and because I still feel young. I still feel like the little kid that picked up drumsticks at the age of 7, and I still have that feeling, that joy, that joyfulness of life, and what I do, and a passion for what I do. Like you do. I think you just love what you do. You have to. I tell my daughter this all the time. If you don't love what you do, and the business I'm in is not easy, the entertainment world, music, film, it's very cutthroat, and it could be you have to have a very thick skin, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I love what I do, good, bad, and indifferent. And I'm blessed that I get to do it for a career. And if I can put forth anything to anybody that's looking to get into it, don't do it because you feel like you have to. You do it because it's in your DNA that you have to do it, because it's part of you, not because somebody's pressuring you.
Absolutely. I've been doing this for 11 and a half years. Thanks to you, I'm up to 1,157 episodes. This is what I want to do to the day I die. That's how passionate I am about it. But the next question I want to ask you, what can you tell us about those awards you have around us?
Oh, well, you're missing a bunch over here. I'm actually in the back of my recording studio, which is where I do most of my work when I'm not on tour, which we just finished. Let's see. Those are the 3 gold records from the band that I am in. For those older people or younger people who love 60s music. I don't know if you're one of them, but I'm in a band called, it's a very funny name, but the older people will recognize the songs. The band is 1910 Fruit Gum Company, and we're sort of labeled in the late 60s the kings of bubblegum pop. And our big songs were actually the first gold record, which is there, is Simon Says, which was based on the children game, raise your hand in the air. And that was the first gold record. The second one was 1, 2, 3 Red Light, which is over there. And the third one was a song called Indian Giver, which now is would probably be politically incorrect. The interesting thing about that song is, and it's one of my favorites to play live, is that we were very influential to the punk and new wave movement of the late 70s, mid to late 70s into the 80s. That song has actually been actually a couple of our songs, especially Indian Giver was covered by the Ramones, if you remember the Ramones, the forefathers of punk music from New York City. And they did that song. They recorded Indian Giver. And so did Joan Jett. In fact, Joan still plays it live. So it's interesting that we have had that kind of impact on another generation of music, even though people don't know it. 1-2-3 Red Light was covered by the Talking Heads. Very weird version. But of course, they're a very weird band who I happen to love. But anyway, that's what you're seeing back there. And then I have just other awards that you can't see on camera that for my TV and film scoring composition for different projects. I was one of the composers of the big HBO show Sex and the City.
Oh, nice.
I was brought in on the 6th season, and that was an interesting show because what they did is they didn't have one composer. Most TV shows have a composer, writes the title theme and does all of the scoring of the show. This particular show, they brought in different composers who did different styles of music. So they had a guy that did all of the house dance music stuff if the girls were in a club, and I was brought in to do the real eclectic kind of jazzy, poppy, Latin-y kind of vibe, which the title theme song is all about. And so that was a fun show to work on. Sadly, it ended in the 6th season, but it's a fun show. So that's kind of what I do. That's my day gig. The Fruit Gum Company is my night gig. When we're on tour. And we did some very cool stuff. We got back a couple of months ago from a flower power rock and roll 60s cruise in the Caribbean with all of our friends, all of the top 60s bands of the time, and the ones that are left at least. So that's what you're seeing around here. So, and that's what I've been in the middle of doing, is working on music for TV and film and record production. And that's my gig. That's what I do.
Now we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I do have some more questions for you.
Sure.
We're back from a quick commercial break. Remember, today, it's Friday. Make sure to watch Bill Maher on HBO and WWE SmackDown on Fox 5. WWE will soon be moving to the USA Network in September, but in the time being, enjoy SmackDown tonight on Fox. With that being said, the first question I want to ask you is, who were some of your favorite music bands growing up? Because you are a music composer. I actually interviewed a bunch of music composers. So one of them was Ron Reiserman. He used to work for Saban or Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And one of my favorite shows, and I will always say that to the day I die, Dragon Ball, Bruce Falco, or Bruce Falcon. I got buzzer his last name. I think it's like Bruce Falco, and he does the Dragon Ball scores. So was there anyone who you admired that inspired you?
Growing up, I always had as far as bands, what inspired me to play, probably the first band, a lot of people my age would say the Beatles, and they were certainly major influence and still are. But I would have to say the Rascals, if you remember them. They had the Good Lovin' and Groovin' and How Can I Be, a million hits. And then they're still out there touring. A couple of them are still around. They're still doing it. I'd have to say them because the drummer, because I'm born and raised a drummer. I always joke about that. That's my first instrument, although I play many others. So the drummer from that band, Dino Denelli, who sadly just passed away, was a major influence on me. But of course the Beatles and later on in life, I loved the Police. Peter Gabriel. So those are just a few of what I loved. I loved other pop music, jazz. I studied jazz, so I was a big jazz guy for a while when I was living in Boston. But I'm still a pop and rock guy at heart. In my composing, my TV and film scoring world, as a kid, even before I was playing drums, I always was fascinated by the music behind the TV and film stuff. Watch TV, Lost in Space, or whatever shows were on at the time. And I just loved the themes and the music and how it supported the image. And it was so and back then, the 60s and 70s, they didn't have the technology we have now. So everything was live orchestras and things like that. So I loved that stuff, like, the music behind Mission Impossible. So Lala Schifrin, the Alfred Hitchcock guy who was Bernard Edwards, Bernard Herrmann. He was a big influence, of course. John Williams, who does all this Steven Spielberg, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars, a million of the Spielberg stuff. These guys were very influential in me, especially the early ones. Lalo Schifrin, who did Mission Impossible, and Ennio Morricone, who did all those spaghetti westerns, those early Clint Eastwood movies from the 60s. The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, if you remember those old
Right.
movies. All that music was really, and it shows up in my compositions. In fact, one of my favorite pieces that I did for Sex and the City, called Spaghetti Rumba, has very much a tip of the hat to the spaghetti western, but it was a genre mix. It's a combination of spaghetti western with Latin and pop and a little bit of European kind of Euro. Romantic music. So I tend to pull from all these influences, but they assimilate and become me as who I am, because I was so influenced by these guys. And if you listen to it, you go, oh yeah, that kind of has that little bit of vibe, but it's different, and because there's an old saying that good composers borrow, great composers steal. Right. and it's funny because Danny Elfman, who does all the Batman, all the Tim Burton movies, would always say that, and you can hear it in his composition, who's wonderful. I mean, he's amazing. And he started out in a rock band. He started out in Oingo Boingo. He was the singer in a new wave band from the 80s. And he fell into being one of the biggest Hollywood composers. So, I would have to say early on, a lot of the 60s and 70s TV and film composers were really, that's the one that got me. I even before I played other instruments, I was really fascinated with that world. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. How do I do that? And as soon as I started picking up other instruments, guitar, keyboards, bass, my hands just kind of gravitated towards that stuff. So there's my long, short answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So my next question is actually it's a new subject, song of the day. What song did you listen to on this day, and what were some of your favorite bands growing up? For me, I like Saint Outwear's theme. I like The Who, Rush was one of my favorites, Iron Maiden. So what about you? What were some of your favorite groups growing up?
Well, it's funny. Like I said, the Rascals, the Beatles, the Police. I love the Who. Also, wasn't a huge Rush fan, although I really appreciated them as musicians.
Right.
I loved, on the jazz side, I loved Chick Corea. I was very influenced with that, especially when I was studying up in Boston. Let me think. And I believe it or not, I love some of the pop stuff. I think the Bee Gees were amazing. as musicians and writers. I loved a lot of the 70s stuff. I loved Bad Company, Foreigner, early Journey, like I said, Peter Gabriel. And so the funny thing is about the Who, I was, of course, I think everybody loved the Who, or at least loved some of their stuff, like Tommy. I had recently, I'm going to go off in a tangent for a second, but it's related to the Who. I, through some circumstances, I never met John Entwistle. He was the iconic bass player from the who changed, what bass players do. He's one of the most influential bass players next to Paul McCartney and Geddy Lee. But even Geddy Lee was influenced by John Entwistle. So I landed up through a circumstance with 13 unfinished John Entwistle pieces of music. Now they were in different forms of completion. Some of them were just him playing bass with a drum machine. And so what I had been asked to do, and what I'm doing with the blessing of the John Entwistle estate and his son Christopher, I am completing and releasing these unfinished pieces of music, and they're amazing. And basically what I'm doing is it's going to be honoring John's legacy. We're taking I am bringing in as many people as I can that were part of John's circle. For example, I'm sure you're familiar with Joe Walsh from the Eagles. And he had an amazing solo career also. Joe's drummer, Joe Vitale, is a friend of mine. We met on the road many years ago. And Joe Vitale and Joe Walsh played on John Entwistle, one of John Entwistle's solo records in the early 80s. So I figured, okay, I'm doing this work, and I want to surround myself with people that had worked with John intimately. So I called my friend up, Joe, and I said, would you and Walsh want to be a part of this? And I actually have one track that has Keith Moon playing drums, which is amazing. So it's the Who rhythm section. And they said, absolutely. So I got Joe Walsh and Joe Vitale on board. I'm hoping to get, as we were talking about Foreigner, Lou Gramm, the legendary voice of Foreigner. He lives up in upstate New York, and I'm trying to get him. I already sent him a track, so I'm just waiting to hear back. So I'm trying to get his voice on it. I'm reaching out to Peter Frampton. So there's a lot of people, even working on getting Elton John involved, because Elton was part of the movie. Did you ever see the movie, Tommy?
I heard of it. I haven't had time to see it.
It was funny. It was kind of schmaltzy, but Elton John had a huge hit with Pinball Wizard in the 70s from that movie. So he was, intimately involved with the Who for a while. So I know Elton's former manager, so I'm going to try to get Elton. And now he's kind of retiring, I think he'll have more time to do it. So it's a labor of love, and it's going to be an amazing project when it releases, because it's going to be, pardon the pun, a who's who of people involved. I'm getting all these legendary rock guys that are, had something to do with, and they're all very up. I'm working on getting Sting involved.
Oh, nice.
Play some bass on it, because I have connections in that camp.
Okay. I do have some great ideas, and we will definitely do a part 2. We will definitely keep in touch. While wrapping up your interview segment, this is going to be a long episode because it's a special episode. Will be available everywhere. And until we meet again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And I will catch you later. Thank you. And have a good night. That you're on my show and supporting me. My message is all that